And who says he can't show up in multiple places?
Well,
God, he can do anything he wants.
who said he doesn't show up in each of us?
Every-
I mean, how many
That's
times, I mean,
right.
with Andy's story that you told the other day in terms of, you know, it changed my life, the woman on the airplane. There's no doubt in my mind that, you know, that was God working through Andy to say something, whatever he said. You know, obviously the woman had to hear it at that moment and at that time. I mean, haven't we all been put into these positions where it's like you didn't know what you did or said, but you sometimes you know, sometimes you don't know.
Who bought the fresco?
I think a lot of times.
I did.
Good man, Charlie Brown.
For bringing the fresco, so we're rolling here.
Okay.
Gotta show my, gotta represent.
I actually have my
Say hello to the students at Bergen Catholic High
Hey.
School.
How are you? God is with us
All the time.
all the time.
So Doug, you gonna tell your story?
Yeah. So I was working in the city and I worked up on 52nd Street. And I would go to daily mass. I wasn't Catholic yet. And I would go to the 1205 mass. So I was Lutheran. And I would always come down the elevated bank and I would shoot into, if you're going from Fifth Avenue side, I would always shoot in on the left side and I'd sit in front and go to mass every day. So the one day we had multiple offices, I was called down to 38th Street to do some work on 38th Street, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, am I gonna make it to St. Patrick's in time? So because I was coming up from 38th Street, I came in on the right side and I walked down and I sat in the front. And because I was in a hurry, I get settled in, and all of a sudden, you know, mass starts, and I look, and there's this guy sitting in front of me, and you can tell he's homeless, and you know he's not clean, and I'm like, oh geez, what am I gonna do with the sign of the peace? And you know, the first reading goes, the responsorial psalm, and the only thing that's going through my head is what do I do? Do I get up? Do I move? But if I move, it's not very Christian of me to move away from him. What do I do? What do I do? And that's all that's going through my head. My head is just going 100 miles an hour because I really didn't want to shake his hand, right? I don't want, and I finally put my head down and I say, Lord, what would you do? And I just thought about it and I said, I gotta greet him in the sign of peace. And he was sitting in front of me, I didn't see his face or anything, and when it came time for the sign of the peace, he turned. And I extended my hand, and his eyes were like diamonds, blue, and they sparkled like light on a lake, on the ripples in the lake. And his smile was incredible.
Same guy.
And I said, and it was 1997, 98 maybe.
About the right time.
And I knew that I had touched Jesus. I knew that this man was Jesus. And then what I did, after the mass was over and I thought about it, I went back to work. The next day, go to daily mass, I go, now I want to see this guy again. I want to see him again. No. The day after, go down and hoping that he's in there. Mass is over, I'm looking for him all over the cathedral. And I just kept, for weeks, kept looking for him. And I never, ever saw him again, but it was the most breathtaking eyes. It just sucked you in, it just drew you in. And his smile was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I just told the same, it's scary actually. Not scary, it's also
Would you mind
powerful.
repeating the story
No,
you
not
just
at all.
told us?
I mean, I was at work and ran out of the hospital to go get a bagel in this crowded corner, because it's right by the subway on 77th in Lex. And there was a guy who I distinctly remember, he was actually all black from dirt. I mean, he had he was sitting in a wheelchair. He had no legs, and he stunk so much that there was a path of people going either side of him because they wouldn't go close. because he smelled so bad. And as I was running into the bagel store, I sort of side glanced him and said, you know, what, can I get you anything? He says, you can get me a bagel and a coffee. So I ran in, I got a bagel and a coffee, and I come back out. And I come out the door, and I walked over to him. I mean, the stench was unbelievable, but I walked over to him and handed it to him. And then he looked up at me, and it was his face, this crystal blue. I love the way your description. And actually, it's exactly right. There was this deep, bright, sparkling blue eyes that had love and compassion, and you could just feel this sense of total love. It wasn't so much a smile. It was just this, I don't know. It was like a mom looking at her baby. It was just this incredibly gentle look, and I was stunned, absolutely stunned. Gave him the bagel and the coffee, and I sort of asked him, "Who are you?" And he just sort of put his arms up and smiled. And then, you know, the crowd sort of swept me away. And when I came back out to try to see him again a little bit later in the afternoon, he was gone, and I never saw him again.
Wow.
But I'll never forget his face.
No, neither will I.
I've encountered a lot of things like that, and I too try to find that person again. Never find them. Or, and I share this with my men's prayer group. You know, I call them missed opportunities. You know, where I see somebody, you know, and then, you know, like maybe begging for money or whatever, and I pass. The minute that I pass them, I should have did this. I should have did that. I should. So of course I turn around and come back later, and the person is gone. And this guy telling me, you had an opportunity and you missed it. But it will present itself again. See what you do the next time. And so he has a sense of humor. God has a sense of humor.
My wife also ran into him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
So
I say God has a sense of humor because I prepared myself for the next time that I went down that same ramp, right? Had $2 in my pocket, had a bottle of water, there was no one there.
So my wife and I were on a trip to Greece. It was like a 30th wedding anniversary, and the boat goes into this hot spring area, and the boat can't go all the way in because it's just the water gets too shallow. So everybody on the boat wanted to go to the hot springs. You have to swim in. And my wife said, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. So I said, all right, I'm going to go take a swim up to the hot spring and come back. So I jump in the water. The whole boat jumps in the water, basically. It's like 2 or 3 people left behind. And I'm swimming oblivious to what's going on behind me. And I get in, and I'm by the hot spring. My wife says, yeah, let me go in. So she jumps in. The water's cold. And she's like 10, 12 feet away from the boat. And she realizes that she's not going to make it to the place where she can stand. So she turns around to try to go back to the boat. And she's starting to take water on. She can't keep herself up. Her arms are starting to cramp. And she's yelling help, but she's doing it really softly and no one hears her. And she's far enough away from the boat that people don't realize what's going on. And all of a sudden, some guy comes up behind her and says, "You okay?" And she says, "No, I'm not." And he grabs her and he holds her up, keeps her out of the water, swims to the boat. She turns around to thank him. She doesn't really give much of a description. But the boats, I mean, we're all in this boat. It's a touristy thing. There's no people around. There's nothing around there. It's this hot spring. So afterwards, she's on the boat, and I get back, and she's crying, hysterical crying. She won't go in the water anymore. She's so afraid. But so I almost drowned. It wasn't for this guy. I said, "Where is he? I want to thank him." No way to be fair.
Wow.
He wasn't on the boat.
Wow.
So where'd he come from?
And where'd he go? Wow.
Leonardo, could I ask you to tell the story you told me a little bit earlier today?
I'll repeat that.
Remind me. What? I'm sorry.
When you had your experience?
Oh, the conversion.
Yeah.
Okay. I was an atheist before, like I told you. And for the longest time, this woman was just non-stop pestering me to attend this Life in the Spirit seminar. I didn't know what it was, but Life in the Spirit seminar would be something religious, okay? So one day I just gave up. I said, okay, I'm going. So it was weekend event. Okay. So it was actually yeah, Saturday and Sunday. So I went. Actually, my wife and I had scheduled an event for that weekend, and I canceled it just for this woman, you know, to
Get her off your back.
yeah. So anyway, so I went. Okay. So I was listening to these talks. Nothing exciting. Nothing, you know, that really catches my fancy. So I just sat there, you know, Saturday and Sunday. Now it came to its conclusion. Sunday afternoon. So there's this guy who says, you know, today Jesus is coming. Tell him all your concerns, your problems. Okay, he'll be with you and will comfort you. You know, all those kind of talks. So I said, wow, who is this guy? He has, you have a hotline to Jesus that you can tell that he's coming this very day, this very hour. So I was, you know, very skeptical, but I just sat there and just couldn't wait for this thing to come to its conclusion, comes to its end. So he says, there will be some of us who will be going around and we'll turn off the light and you close your eyes, and these guys will stand behind you and extend their hands and pray over you. Okay? All right. So some guys, some folks came over, stood behind me, and I could feel, yeah, they had their hands extended, and they prayed, and then I heard their voice, you know, like waning. So they went away. So I just sat there. Then all of a sudden, I began to feel this heat, you know, taking over me. I said, what is this? You know, am I coming down with fever or something? So it got hotter and hotter, and then all of a sudden I began to utter sounds that was so weird to me then. You know, I didn't know what it was. I went like this, you know. So in my mind, I know that I was doing this, but I couldn't control myself. So what was going in my mind was, this is embarrassing, you know, because I'm uttering some sounds that I don't even understand. Okay, and then it stopped. What happened next was like me being plunged into this place with unspeakable joy, where I wouldn't feel any pain, and like time ceased to exist, and like I didn't want to go back to where I came from. Okay, then this episode stopped, and when I went back to my senses, I didn't have an idea how long the thing lasted. But I found myself sobbing like crazy, crying like I thought it wouldn't end. So I had my head bowed, crying like baby, uncontrollably, and then I heard this voice. Somebody called out and said, "Is there anyone who would like to share with us his or her experience?" I heard that and jumped from my seat and went to the podium, and immediately I knew my face was a mess. Right? It was a mess. I didn't care. The first words that came out of my mouth is this: "There is God." I realized later on that I had been cured of my atheism.
Praise the Lord.
There is God. And from that point on, It's giving me goosebumps telling the story now. From that point on, I was a different person.
How old were you when this happened?
How long?
How old?
How old was I then? I must have been in my 40s.
Mm.
I'm 70 now.
It was
so
just like 2
30
years ago, right?
More than 30 years.
2 years ago, about 2 years ago.
Yeah,
A beautiful story.
Wonderful.
yeah. So I couldn't thank God enough for being so patient with me.
Changing your heart, mind, and soul.
Say it again.
Changing your heart, mind, and soul.
That's right. Yes. And that's my little story.
Thank you, brother.
You're
Good
very
morning.
welcome.
I'll give you guys a break being on camera. Thank you.
God bless.